will survive.
Have you thought of getting anger matters?
Holly Walker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased to speak on behalf of the Green Party on this National War Memorial Park Pukeahu Empowering Bill. And Mr Speaker, I want to start by reiterating the Green Party and indeed I'm sure all members' profound sorrow at the loss of 5 of our soldiers in Afghanistan in recent weeks. And this tragic loss, I think, really throws the issue of how best to commemorate and how best to memorialise war and our soldiers lost in armed conflict into a sharp and very tragic relief at this particular time. Mr Speaker, in that context, I first want to emphasise that the Green Party is fully in support of a National War Memorial Park. And I think other members have commented on the renewed interest in commemoration of our military history in recent years, in particular increased interest from young people in Anzac Day celebrations. And we support the creation of this park to allow greater space for that reflection and that commemoration to take place. Particularly to reflect on that tragic loss of life, both historically and more recently, to consider and question the role of war and armed conflict, and to think about how best to promote peace. National war memorials like the one proposed, the park proposed in this bill, can help us to do that and to do that thinking as a nation, and that's very important. It's important to do this in time to mark the centenary of Gallipoli in 1915, which is clearly a very significant anniversary. And it also has the benefit of creating some vital public space in our capital city and for our national enjoyment. However, Mr Speaker, we can't and don't support the extraordinary powers sought by the government in this bill. The power to grant rights and consents by order in council without recourse to Parliament, the power to override the Resource Management Act, the Historic Places Act and the Public Works Act. And, Mr Speaker, the truncated select committee process that has been proposed for this bill, the absurdly short period of 3 weeks for the committee to report back to the House. And, Mr Speaker, I heard an earlier speaker, David Bennett, I believe it was, refer to the sacrifice that has been made by our soldiers over history for the rights and freedoms that we enjoy here in this House today. And I say to the House that one of those rights and freedoms is democracy and responsible government. And we don't honour those rights and freedoms that our soldiers fought for by brushing the law aside in order to build a war memorial, Mr Speaker, which could have been done in a timely fashion had it not been prevaricated and cancelled by the current government. It could have been built on time and with due process and probably less cost if the government hadn't cancelled funding for the project in 2009. And the reason we're here today looking at this extraordinary legislation in an extraordinarily short time frame is that prevarication. There would have been no need for this legislation, as the previous speaker has pointed out. And the bill could have proceeded with the cross-party support that it deserves. But what this bill does, Mr Speaker, is continue a pattern of behaviour from this government in giving itself extraordinary powers to overwrite the law when it's inconvenient. And we've seen it with the dismissal of the ECAN councillors, and we've seen it with the creation of orders in council in relation to Sarah and Christchurch, and we've seen it with the Auckland Super City. And this is just another example of this government pushing the law to one side when it's deemed politically convenient to do so. And I want to address some of the comments made by Phil Twyford, an earlier speaker, because I was actually quite surprised to hear from him some pretty dismissive comments about due process. He said the RMA is just a piece of paper. He said it's not our constitution, it's just a piece of paper. It's not like we're ramming through some outstanding landscape. That's what Phil Twyford said. And I wonder if Charles Chauvel heard that speech, because I agree with Charles Chauvel in his previous contribution just now that the elements of this bill are very objectionable from a process perspective. And if the Labour Party really does think that we can put them to one side in such an easy manner, then I find that quite concerning. Mr Speaker, the Green Party will look to engage constructively and to improve this bill in select committee, and I'm pleased to hear from the Labour Party some of the likely concessions that they've negotiated. Those are the kinds of things which may make it more palatable, and our support at this stage is open. So we're only voting against this bill at the first reading at the moment, Mr Speaker, because we have such profound concerns with the process. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Simon O'Connor.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. And I think that is the context in which we debate this bill. And while I will turn some attention to the comments from